I think it's very, very hard to maintain a life-work balance if you are doing research at the forefront of knowledge. I was born in 1953. My father was a biologist and my mother was a school teacher. And I grew up first in the city of Montreuil, near Paris, on the east of Paris. And in 1961, my parents moved to Orsay, where there was a new university and some new research center. And my father was working there. And so my brother and I grew up then in this city of Orsay, where I went to school, elementary school, and then high school there. I got interested in science very early, thanks to books that were given to me for Christmas and birthday by family members. You have to think about that period. So this we were in the midst of the Sputnik era, and the U.S. Then created a lot of books for children. Some of them were translated in French. And there were excellent popularization books about science. And I loved reading them. And, you know, in those books, there were stories about physics and physicists. And something that struck me was that unlike the chemists, physicists were never in lab coats. They were dressed in everyday clothes. That seemed to me a good omen. They seemed more free-spirited than the rest of scientists. And you know, on the other hand, I like to work with my hands, to tinker with various objects. And you know, the fact that physics was addressing the natural world with equations was also interesting to me. But I was not completely decided on physics until I went to graduate school. For me, it was a definite choice, because at that time, when it was time to go to graduate school, teachers, many people, including physicists, were recommending not to go into physics. There was a sort of dip actually a huge dip in funding, and a huge dip and quite a dip in the morale of physicists. So as a student, I was not really I was welcomed in physics labs as with a lot of pessimism about the future of physics. And you know, everyone was saying, "Oh, you should do biology. This is the science of the future." I have to explain that I did actually two PhDs, because in France at the time you would do a small PhD for 1 or 2 years, and then a longer one for maybe 6 to 8 years. And so during this first PhD, which lasted 1 year, I worked under the supervision of John Eland, a physicist from Great Britain, who was, you know, doing a visit in Orsay. And this was in the laboratory of molecular photophysics, which was headed by Sidney Leach, another a very important mentor and advisor. Then for my big PhD, I joined the laboratory of Anatole Abraga, a very well-known figure in nuclear magnetic resonance and a great physicist. And that was also a great advisor. There was then for my postdoc, I went and worked with Professor John Clarke, who was sitting in this chair before me. And yes, I owe him quite a lot, and that was a very important example and mentor. Oh, he was wonderful. So he had a way of visiting us, John Martinis and I, in the lab. He would come every day for half an hour, and ask, well, what's new today? So this was, and he was really giving excellent advice. Because he was coming every day and asking if something was new, we would, if we would find two new things one day, we would keep one and telling about only one thing and keep the other one for the next day, just in case we wouldn't have anything great to say the next day. When you think about a team like ours of three people, you shouldn't think of these teams as an addition of roles or competence. You have to think more about multiplication. So research is not the sort of simple addition of different skills. People stimulate each other. That's extremely important. So we couldn't really achieve what we achieve without this stimulation and this. It's a bit like it would be like imagining a tennis play with only one player. You know, you have to, people stimulate each other, and people have different personalities that are complementary. They might see the world in different ways, and it's very important to bring this diversity together in research. Yes, so an interesting memory I have, I like to talk about, is that when you're young, you don't distinguish always what's very important, what is crucial from what is a detail. And at some point, with John Martinis, we got, in love with one particular idea about the experiment, and that's something we should spend more time on. And John Clarke came, listened to what we had to say, and he said, well, that's maybe that's an interesting aspect of the experiment, but I think here you're not paying enough attention to the monster under your bed. You should worry about the monster under your bed. It means that we were not addressing some very basic difficulty in the experiment. We were escaping us and, trying to fix a detail that, was important but not crucial to the success of the project. Instead of concentrating on the some aspect that would actually, if we would not fix it, it would mean the death of the project. We were sort of frolicking on something that was pleasing to us, but not necessarily essential for the project. So this idea of being aware that you may have a monster under your bed, and you should, your priority is to really look if there was not such monster. That struck me. In the lab in physics, you often see very interesting phenomena, but they could be, most of the time, they are artifacts. What we were proud of in this experiment is that we did a lot of control experiment, so that what we would observe would be true. would be controlled by all the preparatory work. So this is what we were proud of in the experiment. We were able to compare what we were seeing as experimental results. Our observations could be backed by the experimental results were in agreement with theory, but with all the parameters of the theory measured in situ. So it was not just a hypothesis that we would verify. We would actually make sure the experiment was completely leak-tight. This was important because we were trying to see deviations of the theory, and basically any deviations that we would have found would have to be checked very thoroughly. No one would have believed us if we wouldn't have come with a very, very strong evidence. So that was the experiment, to find all the possible loopholes and fix them. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. No, science, I think, is without boundaries. And if you take modern physics, I mean, even in the last 100 years, it has always functioned as an international discipline. The amount of collaboration that exists between countries is always very, very important. In our particular experiments, you see, this is the collaboration between someone from Great Britain, someone from France, and someone from the United States. But this is very frequent. And in our career, we have very often, most of the time, worked with people that were not from our own countries. Most of my graduate students, most of the people that I have trained actually are from other countries than either the France or the US. The first responsibility is to do correct science, not to try to always get to the truth. That's, in my opinion, the first responsibility of the use of the resources. It's that, in some sense, the published result are as professional and as exact as possible. This is the first responsibility. The other responsibility is to train students, is to really propagate the knowledge to the new generation of scientists. And then there's also a third responsibility. It's some effort at popularizing the work so that it can be transmitted to the public at large. It can be done through articles or public conferences or essentially trying to explain in the simplest possible terms the research. So I think that maybe we should ask ourselves to the question of whether what we find is good or bad for society. And yes, I think this is, and so you should at least think about it once in a while. There are some dangerous discoveries. I don't think I have not worked on things that appear so dangerous, but you have to ask yourself this question. I think it's, of course, it was very important for people who worked on nuclear power, nuclear energy. Failures, unexpected problems is your daily life. This is what you're confronted to most of the time. So the life of a researcher is very close to schizophrenia, because you have to be very enthusiastic and believe that in some sense you're doing something great to cope with all these difficulties. But at the same time, you have to be very critical about your results. So you have to be able both to be enthusiastic about them, but also very skeptical as to whether they are correct or not. This you are really operating on some razor edge here. You know, you cannot teach someone how to make good discoveries. What you can teach is how to make sure that you will so avoid making any discoveries. So what I mean is that you can teach about all the possible mistakes you can do in science, and you can hope that by applying this principle that will surely guide you to failure. If you can avoid failures, you by luck and by random Brownian motion, maybe you can hit a big discovery one day. Oh, there are two qualities which are essential. First of all, you have to be resistant to failures. You should not get discouraged when failure happens, and you have to be able to learn from your mistakes. Doing mistakes is important, and you have to not to be discouraged by them, and you have to learn as much as possible from them. When you work in academia, you enjoy a lot of freedom. You can what you can do is to, when something doesn't work, you can change the question that you are dealing with. And go to another question. In industry, you are much more focused, and the goal is much shorter term. You really have to build something that works, and you have to build something that works in a finite amount of time. You cannot leave the success, the success of the project open-ended. So it's much more. It has more constraint, but there's a lot of similarities. I don't think I maintain a work-life balance. Yeah, this has never been a worry, and it's too bad. Yeah. When I was younger, I was playing music, but I was playing an instrument, but I had to, at some point, I had to choose whether, I was going to do physics seriously or not. You can, I think it's very, very hard to maintain a life-work balance if you are doing research at the forefront of knowledge. There's an intense competition, and then you also, you have a lot of things to do. Yes, so something that I enjoy very much is cinema and movies. I have actually had the great fortune of teaching a course with a friend of mine who is a professor of cinema. So we taught physics and cinema. We together we had the name of the course was Cinema and Physics. It resulted from a contest in my university where the dean of arts and sciences wanted to bring together people in the humanities and science. So she started this contest where two professors, one from the humanities and one from science, had to team together to create a course. And so my friend and I proposed cinema and physics, and we won the contest. But then we had to teach this course, so it was very enjoyable. Personally, the kind of environment that has always stimulated my creativity was geographical change. When I go somewhere else, when I break the routine of going to work every day in the same place, and I visit new geographical place. I have actually moved now several times in my life, and went to different labs, collaborated with new people. I have found this extremely stimulating.